Hi guys, and welcome back to MotorScotti, and welcome back to the origins of MotorScotti. Yes indeed, I thought it would be a fitting time, now that I've finished with my kit Trans Am Night Rider series, to go back to the origins of my channel, which all started here with my Yamaha 1100 Dragster, or V-Star if you're living in North America. It was called V-Star. Anyhow, I've bought this motorcycle in 2014 and immediately started to convert it. It was absolutely bone stock when I bought it, and started converting it to what it is now, to this bobber conversion. It has this beautiful blue color bobber conversion kit. They make loads of conversion kits for mostly Japanese motorcycles. Check them out, link in the description with all the links to blue color bobbers, and also to my first videos when I showed this conversion process in my first 3 or 4 videos I made on this YouTube channel. So as I said, I bought this in 2014 and immediately converted it to what it is now, or at least started converting it. And over the years I've done a couple of changes, very mild changes to it. I've added this tank stripes, and I only recently relocated the taillights, indicators, stop lights. This is all-in-one LEDs from here in the center, just behind the saddle where this bolt is, to where they are now, to completely comply with road regulations here in Switzerland. I don't know why I waited so long, but I've made these brackets myself, custom made these brackets and painted them gloss black to match the brackets here of the fender, and I really actually prefer the style now that I have it this way than to how it was before. Anyhow, I've enjoyed this motorcycle for over 6 years now, and over the years obviously a few things have had to be remedied. I've made videos about how to change the oil and the air filter and stuff like this, just general maintenance. But over the years obviously a few things, minor things, have come to the surface, such as here this little chip computer rubber that broke down, and here also the heat wrap. It used to be white and I changed it to this golden brown one. I also slightly damaged this headlight bezel here. Well, not actually this one, this is the replacement one, but the previous one, the original one. So if you're not familiar with this motorcycle on my channel, I did a presentation video here on my channel. I published in March in German. It is basically a sales ad video because I'm intending to sell this beautiful motorcycle. I've really enjoyed this motorcycle for the last almost 7 years that I've owned it now, and I mean obviously quite connected to it since I've converted it, and yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Here I haven't really been on extremely long trips. It's not really a motorcycle that I would recommend for very long trips, but it also would depend on your body shape, given the fact that the handle is quite narrow and I have to lean forward quite a bit. It was maybe not the smartest conversion in terms for my legs and arms to sit comfortably for a couple of hours, but up to 2 hours, that's the longest I've been on this motorcycle in one go. Anyhow, times change and I'm more into driving my kit Trans Am now that I have that and everything is sorted, than actually spending my time riding a motorcycle. Yeah, it's just, I've had a great time, but somehow I feel like this is over for me. This chapter is closed, at least for the time being. So if you are interested in this motorcycle, let me know. Obviously I'm located in Switzerland. If you're not yourself in Switzerland or anywhere close to it, this might be a bit of a deal breaker, or not really worth your while getting this motorcycle imported to wherever you're living on the planet. But still, if you are interested, or if you know someone, just reach out to me, email, Instagram, just get in touch anyway. Mechanically it's absolutely bone stock. I mean, from the conversion videos I've published years ago, nothing really has changed. I changed the tires and the brake pads in 2018. As I just mentioned, I've relocated the taillights here in the back. Exhaust is bone stock. It still sounds like a Hoover. That's one thing most people would want to change immediately. Leave it in neutral here. So yeah, you can hear this, or maybe you can't hear. There's really not that much to hear. It's very quiet. It's just stock, but it did the job for me for the amount of kilometers I was putting on it, or I'm still putting on it. I'm really not using it that much anymore, but I'm still riding it every now and again, also just to drive it, because any car or motorcycle you don't drive starts to deteriorate. So fluids need to mix. It needs to get the cobwebs blown out. And as I always say, driving is the most important thing, the best maintenance, and keeping the fluids fresh. It has now 32,949 kilometers. Not that much. Shut it off. It's air cooled, so I don't want to have it run here too long without being able to cool. So as I said, first I took care of this trip computer rubber button here. It was cracked and I couldn't really find a replacement button online. And if you wanted to go to the dealer and get one, they could only sell you the whole assembly. And I looked up the assembly also online. And there were a few, but then those rubber buttons were just as cracked as mine one was, so there was no point in buying those because the button itself worked fine. So I had to figure out my own way of fixing this rubber button. The next issue I took care of was the exhaust wrap here. It used to be white, but it got quite ugly and it started to rip, and as I can notice now, it's starting to rip here again. This is just the way I'm putting my foot down. But anyhow, let's have a look at how I did that. As you might have noticed, this heat wrap here is nice on this side, but it's kind of torn on the longer exhaust, and I've been thinking about putting another color on it for a while, so this is why I got some fresh exhaust wrap. That's when I'm going to take care of this. Now I'm going to take off the old and put the new one on. Let's see. Now that's done for this side. Um, yeah, I went back to using my old clamps because these are absolutely garbage. Now let's just hope that I have enough. It looks like a lot, but let's just hope it's gonna be long enough to do the underside, which is longer. And here we have the final result. I am really pleased with it, given the fact that it's now a bit, well, the gold I think matches the saddle a bit better than the white that I had before, and a cream color. Yeah, it's fairly easy, but it really takes a lot of time to get the whole band through the exhaust if you don't want to take the exhaust off first. The next issue that on the surface is barely visible is the chrome headlight bezel. I hit a pole when putting the bike on the stand and bent the bezel slightly. Again, it's not that big of a deal, except that it might slightly affect the headlight beam direction. I know it's a small thing, but I haven't been able to heat it up and bend it back, and I'm quite picky when it comes to this bike, so I decided to just buy a new one. The OEM headlight bezels for these models are quite hard to find and expensive. I found this one on Megazip, coming directly from Japan. I actually bought it on eBay, but if you go to the website of Megazip directly, you might be able to get a better price. I don't know. Just check them out, they're really good. Removing the bezel is no big deal. 2 Phillips screws and the wire plug. Now before I remove the bezel from the headlight bucket, I measured the position of the left and the right adjusting screws with a caliper, which is exactly where I want them to be on the new bezel as well. This ensures that the light beam is positioned correctly for me and for oncoming traffic. The rest is self-explanatory. There's not a lot of fancy stuff on this bike. And here we go, good as new. Speaking of the light aim or the beam aim, this is a good time to actually take care of this, and it's quite easy. I mean, you can easily do this at home or anywhere where you just have a wall and you have enough distance, and maybe you might have to do it with a second person, but if you have a stand, a center stand where the motorcycle can stand upward, straight, you can do it yourself. First of all, choose a wall where you're going to have your light beam set up against. So in this particular case, I have my motorcycle here, and I'm using this garage door. And then the way we have to have it in Europe is that you measure 5 meters from the wall up to the axle of the front wheel. This is where you're going to position your motorcycle at, and then it has to be straight. So obviously I have my motorcycle stand here so that the bike can be positioned straight. Now, measure the height from the bottom, from the floor, up to the center of your headlight, which is pretty much exactly 90 centimeters. Now over here at the wall, we're going to take these 90 centimeters and make a mark here at the wall at these 90. So I'm going to take some tape, make a cross here, measure 90, as well just extend the band a bit. That's 90, and from there we're going to go down 5 centimeters and make another mark, which is here. Now switch on your low beams. With a Phillips screwdriver you can adjust the beam here on either side, sideways, up and down. You're just going to have to figure out which one's which. And then the goal here is that you see this mark where it goes from bright to dark. This has to come up to this lower point, and then the beam goes up that way, needs to reach the top mark to the level where this actually reaches the highest point here and goes back down. This here needs actually to come down here and over. So we're just going to have to adjust with the 2 adjusting screws the beam so it goes slightly over where we have the edge between dark and bright on the light here on this level, and the upper point where it basically reaches the top end of this beam at this level, and then from there on goes slightly back down. Adjusting it with these 2 screws. Now you can see we're pretty damn close where we have the line between dark and bright here at this plus sign, and then also at the same time keeping the edge of the bright passage here, bright stream or beam on this at these 90 centimeters, and from here on out it's slightly going down. I don't know how well this is showing on camera, but this is the way it's set up. So we're good to go. And last but not least, I also had some issues with the taillight wiring that I did in 2014. Over 6 years, there is a potential of corrosion or other problems, things that can break down in here. So I'm also gonna address this in this video. Obviously now you already see the after. Everything has already been fixed. Just gonna go down or gonna go back a couple of months, or even some of it I did a year ago. So what I'm going to do now is to use a multimeter and measure the resistance of both resistors here. There's one for each blinker, because of the fact that I've installed LEDs instead of the normal bulbs in the back, and that either I would have to change the relay or install resistors. But since I still have the normal bulbs in the front, I need the normal resistance in the front, or the normal relay output in the front, power output in the front, and the limited power output in the back. That's why I went the way and installed resistors for the rear blinkers. The reason why I thought that the resistors might be broken is that simply the blinker was blinking too fast, so therefore I thought that the resistor was not doing its job. But I tested it with the multimeter, checked it for ohms, and like everything was fine. But I did find that the connectors that connected the new wires to the existing harness were actually partially corroded, and that was the issue of or the source of the issue. And so I ended up taking off these connectors and putting some fresh cables in there, and solder everything and sealing it with heat shrink, and that solved the problem. Last but not least, after I had fixed all the gremlins here with the taillight wiring, I thought it would be best to give this taillights a fresh coat of clear coat, just to be nice and shiny again, because it started to fade. So I did just that. And that's it, guys. After that, this motorcycle was perfect again. I mean, these are pretty bulletproof anyways, because let's face it, there isn't that much on it anyways. I mean, it's air cooled, there's no ABS, there is no electronic fuel injection. It's very straightforward. There's not even a chain. There is a transmission shaft here from the gearbox. It's a 5-speed gearbox going over here. You have the final drive. So it's extremely low on maintenance. The only thing that's a bit annoying on this motorcycle is when you do an oil change, you have to drop the exhaust. Even so, I mean, to get, not for the oil itself, but for the oil filter that's in behind this housing here, you can get an oil filter relocation kit, which brings the whole system of the oil filter up here in front, which is actually a very handy thing to do. I've never done it because how often am I changing the oil? Once a year, and it's really not that big of a deal. For me, it changes the optic a little bit, but I can totally get it. You do it once and then the oil change is done literally in 10 minutes, including a new oil filter. Anyhow, guys, thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one.